If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Well, Holly, let's go to the IB Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard hotline and bring in our next guest.
Yeah, Marissa began her agricultural career in 2009 and has farmed around the country, leading and developing agricultural programs, education programs in both California and Texas. She has a degree in agriculture education from Texas State University, and she manages ACC's Sustainable Agriculture Program. That's and she's highly involved with Central Texas Gardener, which is a PBS program down in Central Texas.
In the Austin, Texas area.
Welcome to the program, Marissa.
Hi there. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, not only to educate Holly and myself, but all of our listeners on probably some things that we're not aware of in which we can do to build our soil and keep it healthier than what we're aware of.
Now, I have friends who don't know much about gardening, and they tell me that we play in the dirt, and I say that we play in the soil, not the dirt. So what is the difference between soil and dirt?
Well, I like to say dirt is something that you scrape off of the bottom of your shoe. So dirt is something you might crack into the house, and soil is a medium for plant growth. So soil is alive, our biggest difference and thing to recognize.
Well, and that's the difference there, that soil is alive, and whether man-created or nature-created, it has a tremendous amount of nutrients. And why is soil so important to plant life? Let's break it down to the scientific level here, if you would.
Sure. Well, it's about how plants grow and where they draw nutrition from. That is the biological activity in our soil. Without that, if we're missing life in our soil, our plants aren't going to grow. So the health and wellness of our soil are essential to the health and wellness of our plants, and then it comes down to ourselves. Our own nutrition and our own gut health is dependent upon all of those things that make health.
Okay, so
Are you on speakerphone, Marissa?
Yeah, are you getting some feedback?
Yeah, if you could
a little
just,
better.
Yeah, thank you. So why build your soil sustainably? There's a lot of products out there that will feed your plants, supposedly. Why is it important to build your soil versus feed your plants?
Sure. So that's kind of a classic adage with sustainable agriculture is feed the soil, not the plant. So if you are putting topical kind of applications just on your plant, you're adding maybe vegetative growth and increasing that plant's life, but you're not actually improving anything for future generations. So if you think about how plants absorb nutrition, it's actually the microorganisms in the soil are breaking down organic matter and making those minerals and nutrients that they need available to the plant. So if we're taking care of our soil health and encouraging life in our soil, we are from the bottom up making better plants. And even if you have, like I'm looking out at the farm right now and we have eggplants still out here right in front of me, and they're a really healthy crop, but when we take those out, because we've been nurturing our soil with compost and organic matter, the next crop that we put in is also going to be healthy, whether it be a cover crop or cash crop.
Well, let's talk about the term there, cover crop. What is the purpose of a cover crop? Is it simply to protect the soil from the atmosphere, the sunlight, and the wind, or what benefits does a cover crop have in building your soil?
Sure. So that's one function, just like you mentioned. We always look to Mother Nature, and she doesn't leave bare soil, so we definitely want to protect our soil from erosion and the elements. In addition to that, when we're cropping our soil, we are taking away from it. So we're taking nutrition, and we actually take a little bit of soil when we harvest, if you think about harvesting a root crop. So planting a cover crop also gives back to the soil, depending on what you plant, in multiple ways. So a cover crop that has a lot of biomass, you're putting organic matter back into your soil. And then legumes are one we talk about a lot, and they're really special because they fix nitrogen in a natural way into our soil.
So when we talk about composting, and we talk about that pretty much on a regular basis here on the program, and we just finished up a segment about the importance of leaves, is there a wrong way to compost? Is that such a term?
Well, if you're creating compost, you're going to have a good smell, right? And you're going to have a material that kind of breaks down into soil. So you'll know something is wrong if you smell a foul smell. If it's rot, that means it's anaerobic bacteria, or if you're not creating compost, you just have kind of just kind of a rotting pile. So that won't be compost, clearly. So I think that the best rule of thumb there to kind of keep in mind, the recommended ratio right now is 25 to 30 parts carbon materials to 1 part nitrogen. So if you have that rot going on, it means you have too much nitrogen, which is too many food scraps or grass clippings or fresh materials.
Now, there is a term called trench composting, where you dig the trench and you put the material in, you mound it up, and it breaks down. Is that an effective way to compost, or is it best to do it like we all have known, in a tumbler or in a pile? What is there a better way to compost than another way?
Sure. Well, like a lot of things in agriculture, that's going to largely depend upon your particular situation, your land, and your soil. So if you're in an urban environment, something enclosed may serve you better so that you don't have critters getting in there. If you have the land and the area, a large static pile might be a good option. It's really whatever works best for you.
Great. Now, can you tell how healthy your soil is without doing a soil test? Is there a way just to kind of naturally tell?
Yes, of course. We can take a more scientific approach and send it out to a lab. But it's also something that people have been doing for many, many generations. So everyone can certainly evaluate the health of your soil, and there's a few good indicators. One way is just a feel test. So using all of your senses, you can take a look at it and evaluate the color. You can smell it. You should have a nice, rich, healthy scent to it. You can evaluate how much organic matter is there in your soil. And your soil should feel, the kind of ideal is like black chocolate cake. So crumbly, a nice tilth is the word that we use, which refers to the texture. You should have about 50% airspace in there ideally.
So, and that would be the indication. So, clay soil is something that we deal with here. Some areas in the northern portions of the United States, and maybe some places others. What is clay soil, and necessarily is it bad, or is it just because of the compactiveness is the detrimental aspect for plants?
Right. We actually have a really heavy clay soil down here too. It's called Blackland Prairie here where we live. And it has its good elements and its bad elements. What clay means is that it's the tiniest particles. The particles that make up that soil are smaller than silt or than sand. And so, as you mentioned, that can create a lot of compaction and poor drainage. The way to alleviate that is going to be adding organic material, which is kind of always a good rule of thumb. And I mentioned it holds nutrients, so that's one good element of clay soil. There's a model when you think about how clay soil is, which is baklava. It's like phyllo dough. It's these thin layers and little tiny pieces all stacked together. And if you add moisture, it swells and moves. So it's a very particular soil that you need to be familiar with in order to manage correctly.
Okay. Now, you had talked about people having too much nitrogen in their soil with the food scraps and whatnot. Can you overbuild your soil? Can you have too much organic matter in it?
Yeah, as far as organic matter, I imagine you can overdo it with anything. I've never seen it be an issue here in Texas. There's elements that deplete your organic matter. For us here, it's the sun. It'll just get baked right out. So kind of, in my experience, as much as you can replenish that, the better. What you can do is kind of throw off your balance and have too much nitrogen or too much of one element that'll tie up another. So we're always going for balance.
And that's whenever you have that tied up, that's when you see the too much nitrogen, the green growth, or the lack of greenness in the plants. So, like you talked about, is the soil healthy? That's a great indicator. If you understand what you're looking for is the other thing, and I'm sure that's kind of what you instruct people to be vigilant, and here's what you need to look for.
Right. So just like we spoke about evaluating your soil based on your senses, smell, sight, feel, you can do the same thing for plant materials. You can look at a plant and have a pretty good idea about whether it's thriving or not.
Absolutely.
So now, where can we find out more about you, and also like Central Texas Gardener as well?
Sure. Well, I'm down in Austin, so you're going to have to come pretty far. But please, if you're interested in some agricultural education, check out our program at Austin Community College, Sustainable Agriculture, and Boggy Creek Farm in East Austin Institution. Been here almost 30 years now.
Now, your farm is organic. I grew up on an agricultural big ag farm where it was the traditional chemicals, harvest, chemicals, fertilizer. You're seeing, and I think, and maybe you can correct me, are we seeing a movement in the smaller agricultural farms, the sustainable farms, transitioning from what we once thought we knew to going back to what nature has taught us for generations?
Yeah, the USDA census is a good source for that, but what we've been seeing in the latest ones are larger amounts of small-scale farms, and they're typically, well, many of them are using sustainable practices. So, and I am seeing in the people we encounter coming through the program and trying to learn about agriculture, a large interest in growing the way that our grandparents grew. So I think that's a very natural human urge to want to connect with the earth, and the best way to do it is just start planting seeds, and that's how we learn too.
Right, and as we plant the way our grandparents planted, we have to learn a word called failure. With the big ag industry, you pump the chemicals, you pump the seeds are all genetically modified, they're designed basically to not fail, and when we go to the sustainable organic means, there is opportunity and there are failures of crops in which we have no control over.
You bet.
Well, we greatly appreciate you taking time on the program to educate Holly and myself and all of our listeners about building our soil and being sustainable with our gardens rather than having to bring chemicals in order to supplement that nutrients in which we need for our plants to grow.
Well, thanks, y'all. Nice speaking with you, and I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full-length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.